Well, this Chagos Islands surrender treaty, fast falling apart. This deal gets worse and worse and worse. It's one of the reasons you're seeing Labour already collapsing in the polls, as I wrote about today over at heather.news. See the link down below if you want to read my latest article. Do check out my Substack down below. Now, you've seen the warnings from America, including from the new Secretary of State Marco Rubio, that this giveaway, this ridiculous plan from Labour is going to boost communist China, which seems to be something, I guess, Labour don't have too much of a problem with. We learned that Chinese spies, for instance, set to be exempt from the toughest new national security law, it seems. But we have now seen the desperation by Labour to hand sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, this ridiculous surrender that they want us to pay for, reach even more ridiculous and absurd heights, because the claims now coming from Mauritius are that Starmer has effectively doubled the 9 billion already being offered. We now hear the new deal would mean Mauritius would also have a veto to veto an extension to the lease, and that payments made to Mauritius could be front-loaded and linked to inflation. Even within their own government now, it's being reported. Senior government figures saying that this deal is terrible, mad, impossible to understand. Nigel Farage today actually leading the opposition to this in Parliament. This was the exchange. Watch this and let me know what on earth you think the Labour government are playing out here.
The Mauritian Parliament had the opportunity yesterday to debate this at length. It seems perhaps you were rather more reluctant to be here today. Jonathan Powell, our National Security Advisor, has been doing the rounds in Washington, and he's been telling everybody, including the new cabinet members, that this is necessary, that we have to give away the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands, and that in those circumstances, a negotiated 99-year lease is the best option. But of course, that's just not true, is it? It just isn't true at all. It doesn't stand. There is no legal basis on which we have to give away the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands. An advisory judgment from the ICC has no force of legal power whatsoever. Indeed, America disregard it so much, they're not even members of it. And I am pretty convinced, and by the way, they've been fairly busy with foreign policy, the Americans, just lately, so perhaps no wonder that Diego Garcia has not been high on their agenda. But when the Americans wake up to the fact that this has been done wholly unnecessarily, I wouldn't be surprised if we find ourselves, together with the European Union, in their tariff regime. Can the Minister confirm there is no binding legal basis for this transfer of sovereignty whatsoever?
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I mean, the Honourable Gentleman goes over ground that he has gone over before and which I've answered in this House and indeed discussed in the debate yesterday. We've been very clear, as indeed the previous government was, that this base was not on a secure footing, and this has been done in full agreement with the US national security apparatus across the place. And he referred to the ICC. Of course, it was the ICJ which made that judgment. And we are very, very clear that that joint UK-US base on Diego Garcia plays a critical role in countering an array of threats to regional international security. And we will not scrimp on security. We will not scrimp on the security of that base, the solidity of the agreements around it, and ensuring that it is in operation well into the next century and that we're able to operate unimpeded as we do today. And that is exactly why the previous government recognised there was a problem and engaged in this process, and it's why we have brought that problem to a conclusion with a deal that protects our interests, protects the interests of the United States, and ensures the security of that base and its operation. As I've said, Mr. Speaker, once that treaty is signed, it will be put before the House for scrutiny, before ratification in the usual way. And Mr. Speaker, I do have to say that the chuntering from opposite, the opposition seems to have collective amnesia over this. They know fully the reasons behind this. Many of them were members of the previous government. You've heard what the Prime Minister just said in relation to the Leader of the Opposition's attacks. We are very clear this is about defending the UK's security, putting the base on a secure footing and securing that for the future for us and our allies.